The evening light filtered softly through the tall windows of Judi Dench's quiet home in Surrey, washing the room in muted gold. That gentle, fading glow that arrives just before darkness settles completely. At 81, she sat in a deep armchair near the fireplace, her posture elegant yet touched by the stillness of someone carrying memories too heavy to name. The room around her, filled with old scripts, framed photographs, and the faint scent of lavender, felt like a museum of a life lived in full brilliance and in full silence. Her hands rested atop a worn leather notebook, the one she had kept for decades, filled with lines she never performed and truths she never spoke. Judi Dench, the woman the world admired for her strength, her wit, her dignity, seemed suddenly smaller in that soft, dim light, not diminished, but human, deeply, achingly human. For a long moment, she said nothing. The only sound was the quiet ticking of an old clock, steady and patient, as if waiting for her to breathe out the words she had held back for a lifetime. Then, with a voice low and trembling at the edges, she finally allowed the truth to surface. There are 5 people I have never forgiven. No rage, no bitterness, only the weight of wounds carried privately through decades of applause, accolades, and unspoken ache. She lifted her eyes toward the dimming light, as though searching for the shadows of those 5 faces. Faces that had marked her long before the world crowned her a legend. 5 names, 5 betrayals, 5 ghosts that time refused to erase. But who were they? And why, after all these years, did their memories still hold power over her? Long before the world bowed to her brilliance, Judi Dench was simply a girl growing up in the quiet suburbs of York. A girl with sharp eyes, gentle manners, and a sensitivity too large for the small world around her. Her father, a reserved doctor with a stern kindness, carried the weight of unspoken stories from the war he had lived through. Her mother, warm but cautious, understood fragility in ways she rarely articulated. From them, Judi inherited a heart that felt deeply, silently, and sometimes overwhelmingly. Childhood was not unkind to her, but it often felt like standing at a window, watching life unfold on the other side of the glass. She was observant, introspective, easily moved by beauty, and easily wounded by cruelty. At school, the other children treated her with a mixture of admiration and distance. She was different, thoughtful, intense, too serious, as some teachers murmured. But these traits, which set her apart then, would later become the foundation of her greatness. The theater entered her life like a quiet revelation. In drafty school halls and makeshift stages, under dim yellow lights, she discovered a place where she could finally breathe without restraint. Acting did not give her a mask. It gave her permission. Permission to feel deeply, to speak boldly, to inhabit emotions she had been taught to swallow. Yet beneath the surface of this new passion lay a vulnerability she tried her best to hide. Judi trusted easily, admired sincerely, and believed in the goodness of people long before she understood that not everyone knew how to hold tenderness gently. The first betrayals, subtle, almost invisible, arrived during those early theater days. A mentor's careless comment, a friend's envy disguised as humor, a quiet exclusion that stung far more than raised voices ever could. These wounds did not define her, but they shaped the contours of her spirit. They taught her to guard her softness, to listen more than she spoke, and to carry silence as both armor and burden. And though she did not yet know it, those early fractures were the first shadows of the 5 unforgettable names that would follow her into adulthood, and into the years where fame, love, and loss would deepen them beyond repair. Judi Dench's rise was not forged in sudden brilliance, but in the slow strengthening of a flame she had carried quietly since childhood. It began in small, dim theaters, places where the air smelled of dust and fading velvet, where ambition clung to the walls as thickly as shadows. She entered those spaces with humility rather than confidence, uncertain whether she belonged, yet unable to imagine herself anywhere else. On stage, something unexplainable happened. She did not dominate the room, she centered it. The audience leaned toward her without knowing why. Directors found themselves watching her even in scenes where she said nothing. Her gift was not volume or grandeur. It was truth, emotional truth. the kind that does not shout but settles into the marrow of those who witness it. When she joined the Royal Shakespeare Company, the expectations were enormous. She walked into rehearsal rooms filled with legends, with voices that carried authority, and with eyes that questioned whether a quiet young woman could ever hold her own among them. Whispers circulated that she was too subtle, too inward, too soft for Shakespeare's demands. But Judi carried a resilience born of years spent absorbing the world rather than competing with it. Her early performances silenced every doubt. She approached each character not as a role, but as a living soul waiting to be understood. Her Juliet trembled with sincerity rather than prettiness. Her Lady Macbeth carried a haunting vulnerability beneath the steel. Her Cleopatra radiated fire and fragility in equal measure. Audiences saw a woman who did not perform emotions, but inhabited them completely. Yet with recognition came pressure. She began to question herself in the silence between rehearsals. Was she enough? Did she truly belong among those who had shaped the British stage for decades? The fear of inadequacy followed her like a faint shadow, growing sharper in moments when applause faded, and she stood alone backstage. Her move into film offered new challenges. Hollywood wanted glamour. Judi offered honesty. They wanted sparkle. She offered gravity. But the camera loved her, not because she fit its standards, but because she shattered them. Every close-up revealed layers of emotion flickering beneath her composure. She could communicate more with a 6-second silence than most actors could with entire monologues. Still, success did not shield her from wounds. The higher she rose, the more sharply she felt echoes of past betrayals, quiet exclusions, careless judgments, friendships that had faltered under pressure. Faces she had tried to forget resurfaced unexpectedly. Words spoken long ago returned with surprising force. Her ascent was luminous, but it illuminated every fracture she carried. And within those fractures, 5 unforgettable names waited. Names she had spent decades avoiding, yet knew she would one day have to confront. The ruptures in Judi Dench's life did not arrive like storms. They appeared gradually, quietly. Thin fractures forming beneath the surface of her calm exterior. To the world, she was unwavering, dignified, almost regal in her composure. But beneath that controlled brilliance lived a woman shaped by wounds she rarely spoke of, wounds that deepened long before fame ever reached her. The first rupture came in her early theater years, delivered by someone she trusted deeply. A respected director whose approval had once been her compass. He had been a mentor, a guide, a voice she believed in. But admiration is fragile when power is uneven. As Judi began to find her own footing, he shifted from encouragement to diminishment. He questioned her choices, undermined her intuitions, and expressed private doubts in public conversations. The words were soft, but the intention behind them left a lasting bruise. It was the first time she understood how easily guidance could turn to control. The second rupture emerged through a friendship she considered unbreakable. They had shared countless late-night rehearsals, insecurities whispered in dressing rooms, and dreams spoken with laughter. But success is a quiet mirror. It reflects more than achievement. It reveals who truly celebrates with you. As Judi's star rose, the warmth in her friend's eyes dimmed. Jokes grew barbed. Compliments lost sincerity. And eventually she discovered that the friends she once trusted had spoken of her vulnerabilities in spaces where she was not present to defend them. That kind of betrayal is not loud. It is suffocating. A third rupture came through love. Judi had offered her heart with tenderness and caution, believing she had finally found someone who understood her inner landscape. But he withdrew gradually, without confrontation and without courage. Silence replaced affection. Distance replaced promises. And one day she realized she had been left alone long before the relationship truly ended. Some heartbreaks do not shatter, they erode. A fourth rupture appeared much later, during the height of her acclaim. A collaborator she respected twisted her trust, repeating her private fears in a professional setting, using the truth she confided as a weapon for influence. For Judi, who valued integrity deeply, this wound cut sharper than criticism ever could. These ruptures did not break her spirit. but they shaped its edges. And from those edges, the 5 unforgettable names would soon emerge. Clearer, heavier, impossible to ignore. When Judi Dench, at the age of 81, finally allowed herself to articulate the 5 names she had carried in silence, the room around her seemed to contract. There was no anger in her voice, no bitterness in her posture. Only the weary honesty of someone who has spent a lifetime holding wounds too fragile to expose. "These 5, she whispered, did not break me all at once. They broke me quietly, and that is why they stayed." And slowly their shadows rose. The mentor who doubted her brilliance. In the early days of her career, Judi placed immense trust in a director who had guided her through her formative years on stage. His praise had buoyed her. His approval had shaped her confidence. But she later realized that his mentorship came with invisible strings. When Judi began growing into her own artistic power, he subtly resisted. He questioned her decisions in rehearsals, framed her instincts as inexperience, and, perhaps most painfully, expressed doubts about her potential to others behind closed doors. It was not cruelty. It was fear. Fear that she might rise beyond him. "I forgave the guidance," she murmured, "but I never forgave the limits he placed on my light." The friend who quietly turned away. There had been a friend, one Judi believed would walk beside her for a lifetime. They shared beginnings, tiny theater rooms, late-night confessions, the taste of failure, the thrill of first applause. This friend had been her anchor. But when Judi's star began to ascend, the friendship shifted. Laughter thinned, warmth cooled, support became calculation. The final rupture came when Judi overheard this friend discuss her with a dismissiveness that cut deeper than any confrontation. "She's good, yes, but she's not exceptional. People just think she is." Envy is not loud. It corrodes softly. That sentence, Judi confessed, never truly left me. The love who did not stay. Judi had loved sparingly but deeply, and once she had allowed herself to believe in a future shaped by tenderness rather than fear. This man had brought calm into her life, steady, gentle, attentive. But love, she learned, requires a kind of courage he did not possess. He drifted away in silence, shrinking from her ambition, her intensity, her emotional depth. He left not with betrayal, but with absence, the hardest kind to heal from. "There was no goodbye," she said sadly. "He simply stepped back until I could no longer reach him." Some wounds ache precisely because they were not inflicted violently. The collaborator who used her truth against her. Later in her career, Judi trusted a colleague she believed understood her deeply, someone she confided in during long filming days, someone who listened without judgment. In a moment of vulnerability, she spoke of her fears. Fears of aging, fears of irrelevance, fears of being forgotten. Weeks later, he repeated those very fears in a professional meeting, framing them as weaknesses, not confessions. It was a betrayal so subtle yet so piercing that Judi carried it for years. You can survive lies, she reflected, but surviving the misuse of truth, that leaves scars. Herself, the name she never escaped. And then, after a long silence, she spoke the final name. "The 5th, she whispered, "is me." It was not dramatic, not self-pitying, just true. She had doubted herself more relentlessly than any critic. She had stayed silent when she should have spoken. She had accepted less than she deserved. She had carried guilt for choices she made and pain for choices she didn't. She had forgiven others with generosity, yet withheld forgiveness from herself. "I expected perfection," she said quietly, "and punished myself whenever I fell short." Even now at 81, she continued to wrestle with the shadows of her younger self. The girl who wanted to please, the woman who feared disappointing others, the artist who questioned her own worth even as the world celebrated her. But naming these 5 was an act of release, not reconciliation, but recognition. "These 5 made me," she said softly, "not because they wounded me, but because surviving them shaped the strength I finally learned to claim." Night wrapped gently around Judi Dench's home, settling into the corners like an old companion. The last glow of evening faded from the windows, leaving only the soft amber light of a single lamp illuminating her face. She sat still, not with heaviness, but with the quiet clarity that comes after speaking truths long kept in the dark. For so many years, the world had seen her as the embodiment of grace, the unwavering performer, the dignified woman whose strength seemed immune to time. But strength, Judi knew now, was never the absence of wounds. It was the choice to keep moving despite them. Naming the 5 people she had never forgiven did not reopen old pain. Instead, it gently lifted the weight of silence she had carried through decades of applause, awards, and whispered doubts. These names were not curses, they were markers. Reminders of moments that shaped her, demanded something from her, broke parts of her, strengthened others. The mentor who diminished her, the friend who envied her, the love who slipped away, the colleague who used her vulnerability, and the self she struggled for years to embrace. Each had carved a different kind of scar. Each had shaped a different kind of wisdom. Judi breathed in slowly, feeling a strange tenderness toward the woman she had been at each stage of her life. Not forgiveness, but understanding. It was enough. As she leaned back in her chair, letting the quiet of the night settle around her, a thought drifted through her mind like a final whisper. What parts of our past continue to hold us long after we believe we've let them go? And who might we finally become when we dare to name the wounds we've always feared to confront?